good.
Are you good to
Me
go?
too.
Then
I
let's
I
go.
am. Audacity's
Let's
cooperating with me
let's
now.
let's podcast.
Yeah.
um, welcome everyone to episode 8 of the Reactor Corps. My name is Kyle Springer, and I am joined by Melissa Wilkinson once again. How are you
Hello,
doing,
it's me.
Melissa? Yeah,
I'm doing fine. How are you, Kyle?
I am doing pretty good. I just ate some dinner and stuffed my face right before this. I had a
Same.
pot pie. It was a cheesy chicken bacon pot pie. It was good.
Mmm. Flaky, tender.
Uh
That
huh.
sounds nice.
It
I
was
I am lazy, so I went and bought a foot-long sub, and
good
I ate
choice.
half of it, and the other half of it is lunch, so I don't have to cook tonight.
Thinking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly
Economical.
what you need to do. There's a little like market near where I work, and I sometimes do that because their sandwiches are so good, but they're
Yes.
more expensive than like a
Mm-hmm.
normal sandwich. But if you just eat half, it's like okay, I guess it's just like a
Mm-hmm.
maybe a little more expensive for a what you would get for a Subway thing, but it at least fits for one meal. There you
One
go.
meal.
Um, I have no good segue into
Yeah,
this
we're
next
not
one.
here to talk about Sandwich the movie.
um, Sandwiched in this, we might talk about a movie somewhere.
Yeah.
um, we are here to talk about Hellboy, the new movie that just came out, directed by Neil Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was not super familiar with his name.
What else has he done? Because it's
Uh,
such a general name. I might have
Neil
seen other things
Marshall.
he's done, and
He
I did not remember at all.
I wasn't super familiar. There was one stuff he's done. He did a film called Killing Time in 1998. He did one called Dog Soldiers in
Oh,
2002.
I've heard that name before.
He
Yeah,
he
I think
did
that's good.
he did The Descent in 2005.
I have. That's right. Yes, I have seen The Descent. I remember when my friend showed it to me. He's like, and that's the guy that's going to make the new Hellboy. And I'm like, that sounds like a good match.
He did Doomsday in 2008, Centurion in 2010, Tales of Halloween in
Hmm.
2015, and then Hellboy.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't I feel like I had I looked this up before we started. I felt like I had seen The Descent. Turns out I didn't see The Descent. I saw The Cave, which also came out in 2005 and also has the exact same premise. People go down into a cave, get stuck, and there's things chasing them. There's monsters attacking them. So I was like, I think I'd seen that one. Yeah, I've seen that
Oh.
one, and it was like,
You'd
wait,
remember
no.
if you'd seen The Descent.
I
The Descent is rough.
I mean I don't know what you mean by rough, but it was
It's
2005, so I was not like I wasn't really into like I should use critical thinking sometimes when I watch movies that I like to
yeah,
actually have my own thoughts and opinions and not someone
yeah.
else's.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, it was just one that I just like I know I saw it, but that was about it.
Yeah, The Descent is visceral and sad. It's a sad movie. Not a happy ending on that one. And all the injuries all those ladies sustain when they go down into the cave. They're brutal in they're brutal energies, injuries, all of them.
Sure.
You mad lib in your own word, and I'm sure it was perfectly brutal.
There you go. But yeah, so we just saw Hellboy over the weekend. That's what we're here to
Yes.
talk about. We are going to be talking about it, reviewing it, discussing it, spoiling it, all sorts of stuff. So if you haven't seen it yet and you were wanting to go see it, you might want to do that first before we start getting into spoiler stuff. If Melissa, if you did have to give a quick spoiler-free kind of review, should you go see it? Should you not? What are your quick thoughts?
I think it's fun. If you like sort of supernatural action adventure stuff, you just want to see a bunch of cool fights and cool monsters that uses like real life folklore. It really delivers on that. I think it's a fun time. It's it's a bit of a weird one. But I think if you go in thinking this isn't going to be exactly like a normal movie, but it is going to be everything I just told you, which is just 2 solid hours of monster fights, you'll do okay.
There you go. I think for me, I would almost mimic that. It's been getting a bad rap on the internet, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's
I
as bad as people are saying.
No.
I don't necessarily think it's necessary to go see. It's a good popcorn flick,
It
big
is.
action,
It's really a
big
movie you
monsters.
don't have to think about. And
Yeah.
I would say, I believe you told me a couple days ago you looked up the Rotten Tomatoes and it was 9. This is not
As
a
of
9% movie.
as of Friday,
Yes.
the day after it came out, it was at 9.
It's
Currently, right
not a
now, it's
9.
at 15. And the
It is not
audience
that
score,
bad.
the audience score is 63. So that's,
I'd say that's appropriate. I'd give it up to like a 75.
I don't know if I'd go that high, but still, yes, it is right in that area there. It's a good popcorn
Hmm.
flick. That being said, I think we should get into spoilers and start talking about the nitty gritty. Spoiler alert! There goes our spoiler alert thing.
Oh.
I still need to do the pew pew pew, some kind of sound effect thing to go there. But right now we just have the graphics. So if you haven't
Hmm.
seen it yet and you were hoping to check it out, this is your chance to go check it out and come back because we will be here.
Hmm.
Same bat time, same bat channel, whatnauts.com.
Hmm.
There you go.
That's it.
So yeah, this was an interesting one. I mentioned this to you off air. I was like, this has piqued my interest even more because I was hearing bad things.
Yeah.
Not because I wanted to go spend money watching bad movies,
Mhm.
but I don't feel like you and I have on this podcast or our
Yes.
other podcast, the review show, I don't think we've had something that we didn't like, really.
No.
I mean, there's been things that's like, okay, it's not for me.
Yeah.
And I think we do a good job of being like, oh,
Yeah, like
okay,
there's
despite that, here's what worked, you know?
Mhm.
But I was like, ooh, this might be one that it's not doing so well, so says the internet, but who knows what that means. And so I was like, this is going to be an interesting one. So you ended up having a good time.
Yes.
Where do you want to start with this film?
I am curious if you kind of came up with the same list of problem areas that I did. And I'm going to preface this by saying I could tell what all the problems were, but the
Uh-huh.
movie made me not mind any of them.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the thing about this movie is that the pacing and the structure and the tone of it are very weird, in that it's like the movie, and I think it is a solid 2 hours. It's right up
Mm-hmm.
there. It's like they took out everything that wasn't cool. There's no there's no breathing room, there's no slow moments, there's no silence, there's no negative space.
Ah,
Like
yes.
it's so quick, almost channel surfy. It's not very jarring, but you do kind of get like half an hour into the movie and you're like, oh, this has been the same pace the entire time. And it stays the same pace basically
Mm-hmm.
the entire time. And I've never really seen another movie do that. Like, you remember when you're in like English class in high school and your teacher draws that like kind of graph on the board and it's like, this is the
The
rising
rising
action of
action,
a
yeah.
story. This is like one straight line.
That's
It's
that's not a bad way of putting it.
mhm.
I think, yeah, I mean, we also just did an episode of the review show on Birdman.
Mhm.
That's what we happened to cover that this past week. I felt that almost had a similar like nonstop pace
Mhm.
to it, but yeah, there's a different approach. Like I think where Birdman had a very purposeful reason for
Yes.
doing that and like an artistic choice behind that, I
Mhm.
don't necessarily feel like that was the case for this movie. It was
I
nonstop, and
mm,
I felt like it could have used some room to breathe.
I would have liked to have seen that too, but I do think it doesn't feel like they did this by accident. It doesn't feel like this is not the movie they set out to make. I don't think there's anything inept about this.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were just going for something very specific and very different than what we see in a lot of other movies. I will say that this movie is very consistent and very cohesive within itself. Like if it makes a weird choice, it keeps making that weird choice beginning to end the entire time.
Yeah.
I appreciate that about it. Like it is its own purposeful, cohesive thing on its own, even if it feels very different than the last 20 movies I have watched.
Yeah. I think one of those things that you mentioned about
Hmm.
consistency for me was like the big open, not opening scenes, but the scenes that start out with some like heavy metal,
Yes.
classic rock kind
Hmm.
of thing to be like, bam, big punchy action scene is about to start. And I'm thinking back to like Iron Man or maybe some
Hmm.
of the Marvel movies or some more recent action films like
Hmm.
Mission Impossible. I felt like they had maybe one or two of those in there, and it was like one song maybe reused for like a specific moment
Yeah.
like that. Like in Thor Ragnarok, they have
Hmm.
that one song that they use multiple times, but it's only
Hmm.
those two times.
Hmm.
And this was there was like 7 or 8 of these
Hmm.
scenes, and it was a brand new song every time, and it was the same type of feeling, like, oh, all
Yes.
right, here we are about to do the action. It's like, what,
Hmm.
didn't we just do the action? What?
It's nothing but action.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
which isn't to say it's something like just a complete non-stop like perpetual chase or continuing fight or anything like that, but it does kind of keep this pace and keep this tone, and there is no like okay, and like you go from one place to another very quickly.
Hmm.
Like when Alice and Daniel Day Kim get injured after that fight, like just suddenly, like immediately the next scene with no discussion of how they got there, Hellboy is taking them to that cave where Merlin is. Like
Yeah.
all of that, all the connective tissue is taken out. It's like, you know what I think this is? I don't know if you've seen this in like any sort of documentaries or anything like that. It's like when you're pitching an animated movie or something and you've got all your little note cards and all your little sketches and you line them all up on the wall. You're like, okay, all right, I'm high energy. I'm going to get through this, just the major beats of the story. Like, here's this, and this part's going to be cool.
Hmm.
It's like the entire movie is that. It's
More
all
like
of
a
the note cards.
storyboard, like, hey, we
Mm,
we just literally took the storyboard and that was
it's
it.
Yeah, it's like it's all the beats. Like there's very little connective tissue. There's not a lot of this is how we got from A to B.
Yeah.
Not that it necessarily takes like logic jumps, but just like, yeah, we're not going to talk about how we traveled from one place to another.
I mean, on one hand, like I understand that,
Hmm.
because like not much is happening action wise or plot
Hmm.
relevancy. So in one like way of thinking, it's like, yeah, well, that's, not as necessary. That's not useful information.
Hmm.
But then again, I think that's where it faltered, because there's the character moments. Like I think it
Yeah.
had great action. I
Hmm.
don't think it had great characters per se. I love the actors who are in there.
Yeah.
I want to know more about them, and you didn't give me a chance to really know more about them.
Yeah, there is like there's great performances in this. It's always fun to see Ian McShane. I haven't seen
He's
Daniel Day Kim.
he's fantastic. Yeah,
He always is. Yeah, I haven't seen Daniel Day Kim in a couple years since he was on Lost, so like, oh,
he's
he's
still
got my
Jin to
heart.
me.
Yeah. Like the little character beats we do get, I do like.
Mhm.
Like one of my favorite bits is the flashback to how Hellboy met Alice, and she's this changeling baby, like her parents somehow get in contact with Hellboy, and they're like, there's something weird about our baby. She looks exactly the same, but something's off. And Hellboy figures out it's a changeling, and the baby like transforms back into this like creature, and like Hellboy like yells at it and chases it away, saying, "You're gonna come back here with the real baby, or I'm coming after you."
Hmm.
And then the next shot is like the parents sitting there tense hours later, and Hellboy just like angrily reading a magazine and waiting.
Yeah.
Like it's probably the closest like little character beat like that we get, but I really liked it.
Yeah. I think the only other thing that I felt like I had a problem with was I felt like there were two stories in there. There's the like Hellboy origin story, which I don't necessarily want them to do an origin story of just like, okay, we're rebooting it. Here's the origin again.
I think they talked about it enough. Like, I don't think that part of it really overstayed its welcome very much.
I don't think it overstayed its welcome. I just think there were two stories in there competing. There was that, and then there was the story of the Blood Queen.
Okay.
And I felt like if they wanted to do an origin story movie, I don't think they had enough of that. And if they only wanted to do the Blood Queen stuff, I almost feel the same. Like they didn't have enough of it in there, and I kind of would have preferred one or the other.
I understand that, yeah.
And it just felt like there were too many things. Like it felt cramped or bloated, if that made sense. Which I feel like they could have either glossed over the origin a little more and just be like, all right, this is what happened, moving on. Like they did literally at the start of like, okay, here's this very expository thing that happened. That's it. But they kind of kept going back to that, and that leads to the main plot of the story. And there's also the origin story of Hellboy, and they kind of kept going back to that and how it related, which makes sense.
Yeah,
but it's just like
back at the end.
I just want
for plot
one
reasons.
Or the other.
I get that.
That's just me though, but who knows?
Yeah, this movie has so much in it. It does feel like it could have been, like I said, it's 2 hours, and it doesn't feel long. I think as weird as this pacing is, at least it doesn't. There's no slow moments. It's a little weird that you have like no breathing room, like no moment of rest, no like, okay, let's sit for a second and collect our thoughts. None of that also means there's no opportunity for the movie to get slow. It never drags on.
Right. Yeah. So let's break the plot down a little bit, since we've kind of aired our grievances with the film. So like I kind of just mentioned, it opens up with this very expository scene where it's like, okay, long ago in the dark ages, here's what was happening. There was this Blood Queen. King Arthur was like, hey, you're a badass motherfucker, we don't like you. And he ended up banishing her, destroying her body, separating it, and sending the pieces out to like hide them, so she couldn't be made whole again or be resurrected, even though she's dead but not really dead, because
she is alive, but she's in all these individual parts, and she can't do anything until she is reunited.
Exactly. And yeah, like I thought that was a totally fine storyline. I thought that was neat, sweet. Okay, there's all these parts scattered. I'm assuming they are gonna get Humpty Dumpty back together, as I think they made a reference to.
Yeah, and not to like 2 seconds into describing the plot to bog us down too much, I do like what this movie does with lore, with sort of fairy tales and legends and like monsters you've heard of.
Yeah.
Like, we've heard of Baba Yagas, we've heard of changelings, we've heard of Rasputin.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't invent a lot of things. It takes what you already know and puts it together, and that I like.
Yeah, that I think. So I'm a big comic book nerd, but Hellboy is one of my blind spots in comic books.
Yeah.
I don't think I've read a single issue of Hellboy stuff. I've seen a bunch of the pages. I love the artwork. I'm the kind of person that when I want to dive into something, I dive in head first and I read all of it. And so it seems like this big Herculean task that I'm like, I will
Yeah.
get to you one day, but I
Yeah, like, I
have
don't
some other
know,
stuff I want to
like,
do first.
the definitive Hellboy story. Like, there's, like, duh, well, if you wanna read Iron Man, you read Demon in a Bottle, or if you wanna read Batman, you gotta read Dark Knight Returns, or The Killing Joke, or Year 1, or Year 0, whichever year it is.
You kind of just
Like,
go in publication order,
yeah.
is what I've heard. I mean, there's multiple things because some of the volumes and side stories are like, okay, here's what happened back in '63. Here's what happened during World War II. Here's what happened in the near future.
Mhm.
But I think it doesn't matter kind of what franchise you're looking at. I
Yeah.
think usually the best order to do things is publication date,
Mhm.
because that's when they were coming out with the ideas and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a lot. There's
Yeah.
Hellboy, there's BPRDD, there's Lobster Johnson
Mhm.
comics, which we saw in this movie, which is like the one. It's like, oh, I know him.
Yeah, I have not read any Hellboy either. I've seen the Del Toro movies.
Yeah.
It's been several years since I've seen them. So, and I have very fond memories of that movie. I still
Mhm.
remember Hellboy 2 as one of the most fun times I've ever had in a
They're
movie
very
theater.
underrated.
But the details are so fuzzy by this point. I have fond memories, but almost no specific memories. But my
Yeah.
brothers really like it, so I've picked up a lot of like osmosis knowledge from them. And I'm like, oh, I haven't seen Lobster Johnson before, but that's a name that I know.
Yeah.
I know Rasputin's one of the villains. Like, a
Mhm.
lot of this sounds familiar to me.
Exactly. But yeah, so I guess all of that goes to say that I think that's one thing that I know the Hellboy comics also do is they
Hmm.
pull in stuff
Yes.
like that. Hey, you already know this character from fiction or history or
Hmm.
the works of H.G. Wells or who knows what,
Yes.
Um, because there is the like you meet Frankenstein, but there is this also like we made up our own like pulp style hero, and there's
Yeah, I
that type
like
of
that is
stuff.
like it's
There's
like this rogues gallery of extraordinary gentlemen. I like
yeah,
that aspect of the Hellboy franchise, that he's just taking folklore and history and
yeah.
fighting
It has
that.
the like Cthulhu aspect of
Mhm.
stuff, the Baba Yaga, and you know,
Yeah.
um. So I really liked that, and I liked how they treated them within the movie, that it was
Mhm.
just a thing. Like
Yeah.
we don't need to explain who Baba Yaga is
Mhm.
or all of this stuff. It just is a thing, and I think
Mhm.
people often make comparisons to like Star Wars and stuff when it first came out.
Uh-huh.
Everything looked lived in, and they just
Yeah.
like
Yes.
this world has history. This world already has lore behind it. They've been through some stuff, and I got the same kind of feeling with this in a like,
Yeah.
okay, this world is just filled with monsters. They know who Hellboy is. That's why
Mhm.
he's not really like they're not scared of him when he's at the fight
Mhm.
there. Because they know who he is. He's a household name.
Yeah.
Baba Yaga is there. They have a whole branch of the government dedicated to the paranormal and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um,
it everything feels
so I
like
liked
all the
that.
world building and plot stuff does feel believable. There's no
Mhm.
like real stretch of your expectations or anything like that.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, so we get this idea of the Blood Queen kind of being
Mhm.
separated and hidden. Then we kind of go to present day. We catch up with Hellboy and where he's at, and he's being called in to, I guess, collaborate with, I forget their name, some other secret
Oh
society,
yeah,
some
that hunting
gentleman's
club. I did think they
club.
were
Yeah.
cool. I was
Uh,
kind of disappointed that they were out of the movie so fast.
so they were out of the movie, but I feel like that's one of the plot threads they dropped and could have gone back to
Yeah.
explain if they kind of took more of the origin story aspects out of this,
Mhm.
because as we find out later on in the movie, there is some kind of prophecy about Hellboy, as well as there's the prophecy between Sword and the Stone, King Arthur stuff, and Hellboy picks up Excalibur, which basically makes him King of England. And when these huntsman people are trying to like kill him as they turn on him, because that's the thing, he thinks he's going out to hunt a giant with them, and it turns out they're there to ambush him. But they make mention of like, we don't want you to be king of something, and I didn't put that together until after I saw the movie. It's like, oh, they kind of knew something about that, but we didn't go back and explore it. Like, what? Why was that just left open-ended? Who knows? But that was a thing. So
yeah, I do kind of like the part of the story where people are able to figure out who Hellboy is, but Hellboy doesn't know. That they know this legend of, well, King Arthur's granddaughter, whoever, married a demon and descended into hell and gave birth to this half man, half demon. And everybody's heard that legend, and when Hellboy shows up, they're like, oh, it's gotta be that guy, right? That has to be him. Oh, that means he's heir to the throne of England.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know.
Yeah, and so I noticed that and was just like, oh, that's strange that they just kind of dropped that one and never went back to it after that. So who knows?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this movie that could be not stretched out, but it
just
easily
explored
could.
more.
Yeah, it easily could fill up whole more movies on its own.
I mean, they have a lot of material to work with.
Yeah.
So after the sabotage from the Hunt Club thing, I think that's really when the main plot kind of picks up after that, of just like, oh, there's this other character who happens to be, I forget exactly what they called. He wasn't a fairy. He was the like warthog.
The changeling.
Yeah, sure. That works.
Yeah.
He was gathering the pieces of the Blood Queen to put back together, and he's basically leaving a trail of bodies. So once they recover Hellboy from this sabotage, they're like, all right, well, this is happening. There was a massacre at this church. We need to go investigate. And they get to a church, and I don't know if they really wanted this movie to be a comedy. I didn't think many of the jokes hit.
Yeah, and that's another thing. Like, I think a lot of the jokes didn't hit because they say the line and then it's immediately on to the next thing. Like, there's no, like, I mean, of course, there's no, like, real cheesy look at the camera, but there's no, like, 2 seconds of, like, breathing and thinking room after they say a punchline.
The one thing I laughed at, though, was when they get to, I guess it's that first mansion or something, and I think her name was Alice, the psychic woman.
Yeah.
They're being the SWAT team, careful, check your corners. Like, all right, we'll go in on my mark.
Yeah.
And she's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Go in there and help them. Can't you hear them screaming? And she makes this line about, we should go in there and help them. And then she goes in there, and the first thing she does is just sit down. And it's like, what? You just wanted to help him, and all you do is just sit there? What are you doing? Like, what? You can sit down outside. You don't need to sit there and, it could have been dangerous. But just this idea of, like, we need to help them, and then she doesn't help them. I was just like, okay. But yeah, so they start on the trail of this warthog changeling person thing. And they start picking up the plot that, hey, the Blood Queen might be coming back. This is not a good thing. We should stop this. And yeah, so what what happens after that? There's the incident. Is it in the church that Hellboy and the pig looking dude meet?
Yes.
It's in the church, right?
Yeah, and I think it is implied that like the warthog recognizes Hellboy. He knows him, but Hellboy's just like, that's.
I don't remember
No,
you.
and I think Hellboy might recognize, that's that changeling I chased out of Alice's family, 25 years ago.
That's right. Now I remember, yeah. And that's also where Hellboy has the first kind of encounter with, I guess, the spirit of the Blood Queen. That wasn't really clear because it just happens and it's, all right, well, magic exists, so, this is a thing.
Yeah.
And she also kind of makes a comment of like, hey, only someone who is worthy can reign with me. They need to be a king.
Yeah.
Kind of things with this other hint that, hey, you're gonna be the king of England one day.
She's a blood queen looking for a blood king.
There you go.
She's trying to like seduce him over to the dark side. And I will say, I like that she didn't have to be super seductive to do this. I feel like in a lot of other movies, that same character would be way sexier.
It is Mila Jovovich. She is a very attractive.
She looks gorgeous, but she's wearing like not a crazy skimpy outfit. She's not being really over the top flirtatious. She's just sort of being.
We got more skin from Baba Yaga.
yeah, she's fairly toned down in terms of being the seductress while still being completely effective at that.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. That's where this movie chose to put its restraint. It's like, she doesn't have to be that hot.
I mean, or just like, she doesn't have to be wearing that skimpy of a outfit, or
she doesn't need to be like,
nip
sort of
slip or something.
Her fingers over his chest. She doesn't have to be Jasmine trying to distract Jafar from the fact that Aladdin's sneaking into the palace. She doesn't have to be that. the fact that you went to a Disney movie for like Scandalous, like, oh my gosh, that kind of like real, like way off the charts flirting.
I mean, I would even be like, hey, what other movies has she been in where we've seen her naked? Oh, the Resident Evil films, we've seen her topless in those films. Yeah, no, there's none of that in this. But besides that, there's a ton of violence and a ton of cussing, and I didn't look behind me to see, but I feel like there was a younger child in the audience behind me. Like it was like 3 or 4 rows back and like on the opposite side. But it was, it's one of those things, like, I felt like, oh, it's a comic book movie, comics are for kids, and they didn't realize this was rated R, and it's just like, I mean, it's your kid, you can take them to whatever movie you want.
We can talk about this more later. It is it's gruesome, but it is kind of like a Mad Magazine gruesome.
I don't want to use the word comic booky, but it is over the top and is fantastical. That might be a better word.
It's not like anybody's really just getting shot or like stabbed or anything like that. Like a monster is tearing your body in half.
Yeah, we'll get to that scene in a bit here too. But yeah, so Hellboy kind of has his first encounter with the Blood Queen, and then it's honestly just kind of more of the same until all her pieces are put back together. Hellboy has a run-in with Baba Yaga, who he then pledges his eye to. I think that's an important detail to make note of. And I guess after that is kind of when the whole Merlin thing comes in. They kind of bring back that King Arthur storyline of I guess not storyline because we've been
Yeah, but we
doing
saw it
that
in a
one.
flashback, thinking it's just like sort of a framework setting device. Like this was the foe that defeated the Blood Queen, except he really has a
Oh,
personal tie to Hellboy.
yeah, so it's eventually once the blood queen is Humpty Dumpty back
Mhm.
together, she's
Yep.
like, rise my demons, rise my monkeys, do
Yep.
whatever, and Hellboy's like, wait, no, let's not. Mm-mm.
No, no, no.
And then she does like poison dart into is it Alice's neck or Daniel Day Kim's neck?
I think both
Alice's.
of them get. I don't know if both of
Only
them are
one of
hurt the
them.
same way, but both of them are injured.
Well, it's no, because when they bring the person that was hurt to Merlin, it's only one of them that are hurt. They have the poison dart, and it's the
right.
blood
Yes, yes, yes. It is
queen's.
Alice.
It is her. That's
Yeah.
what I thought, but I was not certain there. And one of the blood queen's, I guess, like witches that like served under her, who had formerly betrayed her, was like, hey, there's only one person who can save you, but he's kind of dead. Not really. His name is Merlin. You may have heard of him. He's, the wizard of fame. You should go find him. Here's his address. And that's what they do. They're like, all right, Merlin, we're here. We need your help. And he helps him out, and then he is like, hey, I know you, Hellboy. You're the baby's mama something. You're the offspring of King Arthur. Therefore, Excalibur. And so he's like, you should pick it up and go defeat the Blood Queen.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess Hellboy has a vision.
Yeah, of like what would happen to him, how he would be corrupted, how he gets the right to have that sword from his human side, but what if his demon side completely took over and ruined it? And he's like, no, no thanks. I'll do it with just the tools I already have, because those haven't ruined me yet.
Exactly. And so Merlin's like, no, I used my last bit of magic, and then he evaporates. He gets
he
Thanos
crumbles into dust or something. It is pretty cool.
Yeah, he gets Thanos. And then I guess they go to confront the Blood Queen without the sword.
That. Yes.
And then we see a little bit more of Daniel Day Kim's character of Ben.
Yes, thank you for remembering his name.
Yes. And he had mentioned previously that he was the only survivor from his unit. They were there out, I guess, in Vietnam, I think is what he said.
No, they were in South America somewhere.
You're right. But they were being hunted by, I think they just called it a manhunter or a man-eater.
Yeah, and it's some sort of big, like,
cheetah-like thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Reminded me of Cheetah from Wonder Woman.
Oh.
Which would be an interesting thing to see in a new Wonder Woman movie. But, which I think is actually what they're going to do. Anyways, so we see more of him, and it turns out that I guess he got infected by the man-eater or something, and he now is said giant man-eating cheetah thing.
Did you... Now, that was something that I saw coming from the second he, like, injects a needle in himself. I'm like, oh, you're some sort of, were
He's
creature.
holding back the beast.
I don't know which creature, but you're aware something for
We don't know where it is, but it's there.
Yeah. Or whether it's like, or you're going to Hulk out or something like that. I'm like, you become a creature of some kind, some way.
Exactly.
Very clearly.
Exactly. So they're
Which
fighting.
isn't a problem that it's like super spelled out for you that he's some sort of monster. Like, that's kind of part and parcel for this kind of storytelling. It doesn't need to be a surprise.
Yeah. It was a detail I don't know if they necessarily needed, though, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah,
it maybe could have been a sequel. Been like, all right, by the way,
mercenary. If he
Yeah.
was just a guy, that would also be fine.
Yeah, that'd be cool. But so they're fighting big pig monster dude who has now been like roided out. He's
Yeah, he comes in different sizes.
And so they're tag teaming him, and then the blood queen shows up. The floor falls through. That's when they find King Arthur's actual tomb and the actual Excalibur sword.
Mhm.
And so Hellboy's sitting there like, well, I don't know. Here it is again. It must be a sign.
Yeah.
So he eventually picks up the sword, and he goes full on demon king
Mhm.
kind of thing. His fiery sword, his big horns, his crown of
Mhm.
flames.
He looks very cool.
He looks badass. And then this was also another thing that I was like, I don't know why they're even putting this in here, but then like hell started opening up and all these
Yes.
different monsters started coming out around the world and just attacking people
Mhm.
for seemingly no reason
Well, they are
other
hell.
than they are demons.
Yeah, they are hell monsters. The thing about that scene is that it doesn't really have any shock value to you. Like you kind of logistically know
It's like, okay,
these
I could see
these
that
are
being
bigger,
real
worse
if
monsters
hell were
that are
to break loose, you know?
yeah, like you logistically recognize the stakes. Like these are worse monsters. They're attacking more people. Like the city is getting destroyed. This isn't like Hellboy fighting three trolls in a field somewhere
Yeah.
anymore. The stakes are higher, but the tone and like the level of violence and action is exactly the same as it's been throughout the entire movie. So you don't feel any stakes.
Yeah. Um, but the reason why I thought it was odd to add
Mm,
in all of that scene is because once he kind of gets rid of
yeah.
Excalibur, it just like vacuum suck rewinds them all back into hell like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
And
And
so it's
like
just
you
like, well, why even have that happen in the first place? Like, why spend the budget on animating all of that, on using the when it just in the end it just gets reversed? I mean, I
yeah, and
guess
like
the
there's
people that died still died. They're horrifying monsters. They looked amazing.
yeah, like it
I
is a
loved them.
really fun sequence to watch. Like I said, it's almost like a Mad Magazine level, like cartoon monster violence with just like
It
really
is the
excellent
stuff of
budget, and
nightmares.
it is, yeah, in a
But
way that I found delightful.
I wanted Hellboy to deal with them,
Yeah, like there you just
and he
it's a
didn't.
it's them fight like all the monsters rise up from below the ground, below the the River Thames because they're in London, and they attack all these people, and there's no like human face. They're all just like anonymous random townspeople. Like there's nobody we recognize, there's nobody we've seen before, there's no moment of like parents hide children, attempt to escape from the monster to find help, and they're gobbled up and the children cry. Like
Woohoo!
there's no human sympathetic element to it. It's just like, all right, and for the next 3 months, for the next 3 minutes, monsters tearing stuff apart.
Yeah,
That's it.
and it was gnarly though because they're
Yeah.
ripping people in half or into multiple sections, and that was the one that I was like, I felt like there was a kid like 3 or 4 rows behind me. This is gruesome. So I don't know, man. You
Mhm.
do you. I don't have any children of my own that I know of, so but yeah, so I mean that's also I guess kind of like right as the movie ends because Hellboy, if I'm not mistaken, uses the sword to defeat uh Mila Jovovich,
Mhm.
uh and that's kind of it. The thing that like really inspired him to actually defeat the queen though was Alice going over to Hellboy's father, I'd say in air
He
quotes.
calls him dad. This is Ian McShane.
Yeah,
This is the explorer, adventurer, paranormal investigator that picked up little baby Hellboy from,
exactly.
the summoning circle.
And she goes over to him because the Blood Queen just killed him as
Mhm.
this like, well, I'm the evil villain person, this is what I do, slit his throat, boom, he's dead. And Alice goes over to him and like communes with his spirit and does this thing that she
Mhm.
had done earlier on in the movie where it looks like her guts are coming out of her mouth, and it is the like embodiment of it's like the upper torso and arms of the person, and the rest is your long intestine.
You know what it is?
Large intestine.
It's like a genie. You know, a cartoon genie where they sort of turn into like a little wispy tail.
Never had a friend like me.
It's like if that just sort of turned into an intestine, and it's like going down this woman's throat. It's a wild effect.
I do have to say that one at the end looked awful. I thought the effects looked terrible. I was okay with the first one that they did with the like seer. That looked fine, but for some reason they just it didn't sit right with me. It didn't look
there's something about like the lighting, or it doesn't entirely successfully mold from Ian McShane to psychic intestine.
Yeah. It just looks like, okay, this is CGI.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that is her superpower. She can make this CGI embodiment of this character come out. Who knows? But yeah, that's what happens, and he kind of gives the halftime pep talk. Like, okay, we're down by 7, but we can do it. We just gotta work the defense, and we'll be back. And that inspires Hellboy. It's kind of more of the fatherly thing. Like, hey, like I didn't want to kill you because I actually love you. You know, like all of this stuff. I want to help you out, and you turned out into a fine young man. And that's kind of what inspires him to be like, all right, let's go kill the bitch.
And like he's got this thing, like he was originally like, it was this circle of Nazis that were trying to summon him, like, okay, hey, we've heard this legend of this hell child, could we get him up here on our side? And then the BPRD, or this proto BPRD, whoever goes on to found it, sort of shows up, kicks the ass, and they're like, well, the baby demon's gotta have a home. So like Ian McShane takes him in, and then later Hellboy's like, there's a prophecy about me and all these Nazis wanted me. Like, Dad, why didn't you tell me this? This is terrible. I don't trust myself anymore. And his dad's like, shut up. I took you in because I liked you, and I still like you, and you're a good boy. Now go out there and save everything.
So that happens. They defeat the Blood Queen, and then he makes like the corniest joke of the whole movie, because he has her head there, and he's like, how about you quit while you're ahead, just ahead, and then he drops her into the depths of hell.
Quite like that. The reading of his joke is like, well, it's come to this. I have to say it. How can I not say it? You better quit while you're ahead.
Ahead? And end scene. So that's basically it. And then we start getting the kind of end of the movie after credits things. They're like, so you're a king now, huh? And he's like, yeah, who knew? And so that's the thing. I don't know if they're going to address much of, because he did put the sword back, kind of. He stuck it back in a rock. I don't know if it's the rock or if the rock matters.
Excalibur gets a name. That rock doesn't have a name. I think it can just be a rock.
Its name is the Stone. Excalibur and the Stone. Or there's some like weird action movie spin-off starring The Rock, and it's just like he stuck it back in The Rock. So then it's like, okay, we're on to the next mission thing. I actually really liked that scene. I think
that was fun.
Honestly, that was one of my favorite scenes of the whole movie, was after everything was done.
The
Um,
the two post finale scenes,
yeah,
that little like, all right, adventure team, go sort of thing with Hellboy and Ben and Alice is great. And the part where he's like mourning at his dad's grave and then Lobster Johnson shows up is also fantastic.
fantastic.
That
Yeah.
might be my favorite part of the movie is that little
So yeah, so
teaser at the end.
I think my favorite parts were also the end credits
Yeah.
scenes, and it's a different feeling from the like end credit scene in Avengers, or I mean in
Mhm.
Iron Man, when he's like,
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the Avengers initiative, and they're like, oh my god, are they gonna do it? But it is this really funny uh moment, and again, I haven't read the comic, so I'm sure that it is alluding to other things to come down the road, but I think that that end scene that yeah, where the team is basically going to get Abe Sapien
Yeah.
was the best scene in the whole film.
Very
One of the
fun.
things that I wanted to mention, I guess, about the cinematography of this movie, which then ties into this scene,
Mhm.
um, I think this film didn't necessarily do a great job of capturing some of the style of the comics, if that makes
Mm.
sense. The
Yeah.
the artwork, I mean, not that they have to or stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
but I feel like the artwork within the comics is so iconic that I kind of expect it or want them to do it, of like, hey,
Yeah.
there's very flat colors, you know, just like, or just like one color backgrounds, or it's all in red light or stuff like that. There is a good mix, but it is very uh flat, I guess, not in a bad sense, but the coloring is very stark and iconic. um and I don't know if the cinematography did a great job of capturing that until
Mhm.
that scene where the
Yeah.
room
I
is
see that.
all in purple light. There, you know, it just, I was like, this looks really cool. They're working together as a team. We didn't really get to see that very much, because the one scene where they started to go do that, they split up
Mhm.
immediately. And I was just like, I really like I want more of
Yeah,
that.
that'd be nice.
So hopefully, if they do a sequel, we'll get more of that.
Mhm.
But I liked that they were like, "Oh, Abe Sapien" at the end there. That's a
Yeah.
good little nod. I liked
Mhm.
that.
I like it. Yeah.
And then yeah, then there's the Lobster Johnson
Mhm. It's fun.
scene when he comes back. I'm glad. I like that he didn't come back until that end credits
Yeah.
scene. I was like, that's good. I like that they had him in there, that one thing, and then yeah, he's like, Hellboy is in mourning and he's drunk out of his mind. He's just like,
Mhm.
"You're my greatest hero. I love you, man." Like, you know, and he just
Mhm.
has this really heartfelt moment. And Lobster Johnson sitting there like, "Get off your ass, son. You got work to do." You know, I was
I'm
like,
gonna fly
"Yes,
away on
this
my
is
jetpack.
amazing."
I
I
liked it a
now
lot.
want a Lobster Johnson movie. Give me
I
that.
don't I don't want him as an entire movie, but I do want him to just be the thread
I
through
just
a one
want a
other
Nazi
movie.
killing Lobster Johnson Indiana Jones style movie. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Because that is one of the things that like the Hellboy universe usually does really well, where they have that like horror macabre kind of stuff going on, but then they also have the like Indiana Jones style
Yes.
like pulp action stuff, which we didn't really get from Hellboy in this film, but I feel like Lobster Johnson would be one of those characters to like, let's go
Yeah.
get some occult Nazi
Yeah.
artifact and just kill a bunch of Nazis. How great would that be? That'd be
Mhm.
amazing.
Mhm.
Um, so I vote for a Lobster Johnson movie, please
Mhm.
make it happen. And then there's the end, like the end credits scene, which I had no idea what was
Yeah,
happening in
my
that scene. I had
brother
to
asked
look it
his
up.
friend, and it's Oh, it is some other villain throughout Hellboy lore that is known to be working with Baba Yaga. Oh, I had something
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about, and I just remembered what it was.
We'll get
This
back
movie.
to the end scene here. I have something to read, but yes, go ahead.
Before I forget again, another scene I really liked in the movie is when they're in that like underground base beneath the fish and chip shop, and
Mhm.
Hellboy's trying to leave, and he gets into the elevator, and it's the elevator that takes him into the realm where he banished Baba Yaga. The scene where he's in the elevator and the elevator is not working, and he's like, "Up, I want to go up," and it's like
Or
going down,
you feel like
going
the
down.
first time he hit it was just an honest mistake because his
Mhm.
hand is
Yes, yes, a
ginormous.
couple
But then
times in the movie.
he just keeps hitting. It's like, dude, that's use your other hand. God damn it! Like, just hit the button with your normal hand.
But it's like, and the elevator's going down faster and faster, and all this light around him starts flickering.
Yeah, that was a good
That's
scene.
Yeah, because it's the closest the movie gets to being frightening, and you can tell Hellboy's like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to fight this. How do I fight haunted elevator?
Mm-hmm.
In the movie, despite all of its supernatural occult monster stuff, never tries to go for horror, which it doesn't really need to. That's as close as it gets, and I liked it.
Yeah.
I would like to see, were this to continue, a more kind of horror-based movie, but the thing about
Yes,
horror is that
please.
it takes patience. Things have to be slow. Things have to have that breathing room, that
Mm-hmm.
negative space, that pause to have horror, to let tension build, and this movie wanted none of that. It's like,
Which
"Nope, we're gonna as
that's
fast as we can."
that's the thing though. Now that we've been in this universe, they potentially set that up for a
Mhm.
sequel. But
Yeah.
at the same time, they like are just that like Baba Yaga is a returning character who was this person that she was talking
Mhm.
to at the end credits. They could be setting up some kind of more
Mhm.
horrific
Mhm.
bad guy, um, and do it that way where it is this like, hey, we're setting up Thanos for like 15 movie. I mean, not that I want 15 Hellboy
Yeah, that's
movies
that's a lot even for me.
over the next year, but yeah, but like, maybe by if they happen to do a trilogy, maybe the second film is another bad guy that's not mentioned, but they're really starting to set up who this
Mhm.
person was at the final end credits scene. Maybe they could do something with that.
Mhm.
Who knows? But then again, they did kind of set themselves a precedence for the like pacing of the movie of like
Yeah,
it needs to be
it's
nonstop action, and
yeah,
I
the
don't know.
thing about this
Who knows?
movie is that it's like it set itself at cruise control 50 miles an hour, and it's going that exact speed
Yeah,
for 2 solid hours. And
yeah,
it's kind of admirable that it doesn't drop. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't drag. It is very consistent within itself, and it's a weird experience to watch against other movies, but like I said earlier, I do like that it makes sense in itself.
yeah.
And I want to come back to this more after we hit some other points as kind of a concluding thought.
So I wanted to read really quickly, going back to the end credits Baba Yaga scene.
Mhm.
I have up filmschoolrejects.com. This is an article by, who does it say it's by? I don't know who it says it's by. Is it at the bottom of the thing? Brad Gullickson. There we go. But what I wanted to read was this paragraph right here. And it says, however, Rasputin would never wish for death until he achieved the revelatory wishes of his masters. They were saying that, hey, a lot of people are thinking that the end of the end guy was Rasputin, but
Mhm.
most likely not.
Mhm.
So they said this means that means that Baba Yaga's house and guest could only be Corsi or no, Kochi. I don't know how to say this name.
Yeah.
It's Koschei. Koski. I'll go with that. Koski the Deathless. First appearing in the
Yes,
mini
this sounds familiar.
First appearing in the miniseries Darkness Calls, the Slavic nobleman made a pact with Baba Yaga to kill Hellboy if she could end his curse of life. Over the course of several issues, Koski and Hellboy trade blows, but the conflict comes to an end when neither combatant can kill each other. The personification of death explains to the Baba Yaga that if she wants Hellboy's eye, he must give it to her freely, for he is an unmovable and unkillable as Koski. You'll have to read The Storm and the Fury to learn how that all eventually gets resolved. There you go.
Interesting.
So, could be this Koski the Deathless guy. Costco.
Costco the Deathless.
Costco the Deathless.
A true fantasy Costco for us.
What kind of dystopian future do we have to be in where the only stores that are still around are Costco's? Costco the Deathless. There you go. Was there anything else you wanted to talk about? It sounded like you had one or two more things you wanted to mention.
Just going back to a lot of the stuff earlier, I like the lore. I like everything they put in this movie. I think some things just didn't get enough of it. Like his relationship with his dad, whenever we see it, I like it. Especially because I like Ian McShane's performance so much. But the way this movie is paced and how little time there is to like really grow attached to anything, when his dad dies, it's like, well, okay, bye, Dad.
Yeah.
Like nothing. I like when I was saying earlier that there's this huge climactic battle, but you're given, like, you recognize stakes are higher, but there's nothing that makes you feel stakes are higher. It's like they cut out everything that wasn't really cool stuff, like cool banter, cool action, cool monsters, cool fights.
Another thing they could do potentially, since a lot of the comics are out of order chronologically, they could do a sequel that's more about him banishing Baba Yaga to the universe that she's in, the dimension that she's in.
And that's a cool dimension, by the way. I will stop for just a second to say every set piece, like every place they go in this movie, looks fantastic.
Yeah, looks awesome.
I love the styling of this movie and its production design a lot.
But yeah, so they could do a movie that maybe explores that, as well as a B plot that maybe explores who this Koski guy is, or who Costco the Deathless is. And then maybe have that third movie be the end of that trilogy of what they set up. You know, that could be neat. Like, I would be a-okay with that. Like, okay, we did this thing, we introduced that, hey, there's someone else out there that, you know, is about to fuck up Hellboy's day. Let's go back and give some context to all of this so that the third movie, wrapping it all up, makes the most sense and we're ready to go. I would be totally fine with that if that's what they did. Who knows what they'll do, though? Can't it's hard to speculate and be like, well, I think they should do this or do that, or especially since I haven't really read the comics, so
yeah, I don't know where this could go besides, like, it's Abe Sapien now, and here's Baba Yaga again.
That's right, they did introduce Abe Sapien, so if they went back, they wouldn't have Abe. That would feel like
we're gonna have Abe.
Yeah, Abe is good. I like Abe. Unless, that's the thing. So this comic, the Hellboy comics, is one of, if not the, like, earliest indie comics that has made it big and has made a huge impact on the comics industry, and has a shared world too. Like, anyone else besides Marvel and DC that try to do a shared world, usually it doesn't really end up well for them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's Invincible from Robert Kirkman, the creator of Walking Dead, as well as Valiant comics and stuff like that. But there's also Hellboy, and that has been around for a long, long time, and they've been doing it fantastically.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be a thing. Maybe they introduced Abe in this one. What if we get an Abe Sapien movie? I'd be all about that. What if we get a Lobster Johnson movie? That would be fantastic. Like I feel like I would. I feel like this would be another property that they could potentially spin out into a shared world cinematic universe thing, as they call them.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that they need to do that, but the comic book itself has the potential, and the amount of source material for them to do that.
I like the style, I like the world building, I like the lore of the whole thing. I will say, kind of as you can keep on talking, but as my kind of conclusion, so I said at the beginning, I could see everything that this movie was doing. Like, maybe not necessarily wrong, but I can see, like, why people weren't liking it, why people weren't responding to it, because it is a movie that doesn't really let you get attached to very much. You're not given a lot of time or space to develop real emotional attachments. There's little things you recognize are sweet, but it doesn't, amount to very much. It's not given the space to be a big emotional moment or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, when Alice is attacked with the poison dart, it's just like, well, okay, this is something to keep the plot moving forward. We have to go to another place. We have to maybe fight another thing. It doesn't have, like, the emotional punch it needs to. The fact that it doesn't is kind of... I was trying to explain this to my brother. This is a weirdly relaxing movie because it does go at that same... No, listen. Because it does go at that same... Shut up. It goes at that same pace the entire time, and nothing is given a lot of meaning. So it's kind of nice that I can sit back and not have to feel very concerned about anything. Like, think about where we are right now.
That makes sense, yeah.
Think about where we are right now. We are on the verge of Endgame. Endgame's about to come out. The trailer for The Rise of Skywalker just came out.
Yes.
There's all of these big emotional things where every little thing's going to have, like, meaning to it, and it's going to resonate with you, and it's almost stressful to have... Like, I'm very excited to see Endgame, but it's like, that's 3 hours of a lot of emotional stress. The fact that this movie didn't put a ton of weight and meaning on anything was like, oh, I just get to watch all the fun action scenes and all the cool monster fights, and I don't have to worry about the stakes. I think that it could definitely be a flaw for somebody, that they're like, I couldn't feel the stakes very much. Like, there's no escalating action. It's kind of the same the whole way through. Like, I can see how that would be a flaw for some people, and I don't think I would want to see other movies do this. Like, I like what this did. I don't want to see it elsewhere, I don't think. This might be like a one-time thing, but I like that it was almost like a break. I got all the great things out of a movie without having to worry about, like, continuity and, like, oh, I've been with this character for years and now they're dying and the franchise is ending. It's just like, it's 2 solid hours of fun and nothing else. And that's the drawback, but also kind of the benefit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry, I was a little bit distracted as you're talking that, because your camera just got really big, which it usually gets really small, which is the bad thing. It's like, oh no, it's super small, they can't see you. But then it was like, let's focus on Melissa right now. So I was trying to fix that, but it is still not super fixed.
Well, of course,
let's see if
focus
we can...
on me, because I was the one talking.
Exactly.
And I had the big end of the movie speech.
I was like, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut and let her talk, and I'm just gonna see if I can fix this in the background here. But yeah, I don't think I have much more to say about the film. Yeah, I wish we got to spend more time with the characters and fall in love with them.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
This
is a movie I I definitely would not have minded if it was something that could grow a little bit more attachment to it. And maybe it's something I could definitely see myself sitting down with this again in the future. And
Hmm.
maybe I will. It seems like something you could easily like throw on and come on at any point in. And like if you catch it on TV, like you'll start 40 minutes in and watch it to the end and then catch the beginning 40 minutes on TV the next day. And it seems like something because it's so consistent and so evenly paced, you could kind of cycle through it.
Hmm.
Maybe it could grow on me or anybody else a lot more the more you watch it. I think it lends itself to being rewatched like that. So, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I guess that is it. Little bit of
Oh,
housekeeping for
yes.
you guys. We also have a number of other podcasts that you guys can get. The whatnauts.com will have all sorts of more information, but if you guys search the Whatnauts in whatever your podcasting app of choice is, you can find all of our shows. We do one called The Review Show, which is basically a
Yeah.
weekly book club style show. And Melissa, what are we covering this next week, this coming week here?
This coming week, we are covering a short anime series called Terror in Resonance. You told
Exactly.
me it was also available out there under the title Terror in Tokyo.
Yeah, it's like
And it's
alternate titles, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
and it's I haven't started it yet, but it's kind of a crime mystery show trying to find these
Yeah.
people that committed some terrorist act. I don't know. I haven't started, so I don't know exactly what the act is, but boy,
Yes.
is somebody going to go investigate it.
There you go. It's also directed by Shinichiro Watanabe, who
Mhm.
also did Cowboy Bebop and Space Dandy, Samurai Champloo, stuff like that. So it
Mhm.
is one to go check out. That is the review show. We also do a show called The Captain's Log,
Yeah.
which is our like weekly off-topic show. We talk about whatever. We recently talked for about an hour and some change, all about the new Disney Plus streaming
I'm
service
very excited
and
for this. Yeah.
talking about all of the stuff there. But you never know what you're gonna get each week.
Mhm.
Sometimes we just goof off and share stories and stuff like that. Melissa, where can the people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Wilkywit. That's WILKYWIT.
And you can find me at Yo Kyle Springer on both Twitter and Instagram. We are at the Whatnauts on Twitter if you guys want updates with this show or any of our other podcasts. I'm going to be putting this thing out first thing in the morning. It is Monday night when we are recording this, so episodes of this usually come out on the Tuesday after whatever it is we end up talking about. That is subject to change, but you can get most of our other podcasts a little bit early if you support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/the Whatnauts is where you can do that. You can get access to early episodes at the $1 level. At the $3 level, you can get access to exclusive episodes, and we have a recent episode that is Batman Beyond centric.
Yeah.
We watched a couple episodes of that show, as well as an episode of Justice League Unlimited, also about Batman Beyond. But that's it. That's all. Go like, share, subscribe if you are watching on the free feeds. We would love a review or some stuff like that on iTunes. If you have good things to say, that would be much appreciated. My name is Kyle Springer. I already said that. I don't know why I'm saying it again.
I don't know if anybody forgot from the beginning to the end.
No one cares who I am.
I'm the breadwinner around here.
Look, Melissa, I'm the breadwinner around here. This has been episode 8 of the Reactor Corps. We will see you guys next time. Adios.
Bye.
Party people! Thank you for checking out that episode of the Reactor Corps. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, go subscribe to our channel right up there, over in that corner. And maybe also go click on this thing because you like us and love us a lot. Yes, you do. You do? Oh.